not sweating on camera. Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast, Last Week with India AI, in this very special coverage of Race 2020. We're on day 4 today, and we've had so far about 20 different sessions, maybe a little more than that, over 60 plus speakers, and a whole lot of gyan about all things AI in India. So today we have the entire team back online to give us a roundup of the sessions that happened yesterday and what we can really expect and the glimpses of what the sessions are lined up for today. So good morning and welcome back, team. It's great to have you all here. And hi, Jibu, how's it going?
Oh, hi, Sandhuja, hi, Samiksha, hi, Nivedita, and
Hello.
Soumitra.
Hi.
Yes, yeah, we had a very engaging sessions yesterday. Even though there were some glitches in between, but some of the sessions we attended were really good and very in-depth coverage. I mean, notably, I think the sessions I was attending was especially the one on unlocking data for innovation. I really feel that was one of there were so many valuable points were discussed in that session. And but the first part was India AI was a subject of one of the sessions. And NEGD and Digital India CEO and President Sri Abhishek Singh in his one of his presentations at one of the sessions on Métis Showcase. I think some of us attended those sessions. He was talking about India AI. So that was a very proud moment for us. And importantly, I was blown away by Hemant Darbari's session. You know, the work India has been doing in CDAC, especially, doing in hardware. One thing I often get into this long debates and arguments, especially with the academic folks, like Manan Suri from IIT Delhi, he's a hardware guy, right? So it's why people don't speak about hardware when it comes to AI. It's all about data. And people often forget about the hardware. I think one of the best bits about the conversations from yesterday is people, I don't know, throwing some, having some throwbacks in the sessions. Someone was mentioning about expert systems, which were like early models of AI, even like 70s and all, and the hardware's role, which is very important. Yet, I mean, we know why Nvidia is making money. We know why Google has created, its own, chips, right? And even why I'm forgetting Google's AI chip. Okay, Amazon has Inferentia, Google has TPU, tensor processing unit. That's the one. So these things are there, and it's something we seldom discuss. So it was very exciting to see how the presentation, very packed presentation, lot of technical stuff. So that was the first thing that caught my attention. Really, I think Sandhuja, you were attending that presentation thoroughly yesterday, right?
So that was actually part of the Métis Showcase. And for me, the best part about the Métis Showcase, maybe I'm a little prejudiced here, but my favorite part was the CDAC presentation by Dr. Hemant Darbari. Very, very insightful, again, very loaded, and it was very precise as well. He stuck to time, which is really great. I think a lot of sessions sometimes I think are going a little over time. So I think it was good to see some very comprehensive presentations. And more importantly, I think the focus on, like you correctly pointed out, Jibu, I think the hardware development and the hardware market essentially for AI, because that's pretty much the backbone of what is actually powering AI. So this, of course, there's all these conversations around data, and the fact that we have such diverse data sets is all fantastic. But finally, where is it being processed? How is it being processed? Do we have the capabilities here in India? And if anyone were to pay attention to Dr. Darbari's presentation yesterday, the answer is yes. And in fact, I've done an entire special story on this. You all can go and check it out on the website. It's indiaai.gov.in. There is a story on how CDAC is really sort of making, and powering India's AI revolution. And it's just basically an overview of all of the different initiatives they're doing. And I'm just going to take a minute to really just go into that. So a couple of things. I think the most recent announcement on this front was the fact that CDAC is actually going to be commissioning India's largest HPC AI supercomputer called Param 210 AI. And just to give our listeners a bit of reference, 6.5 petaflops is considered, the peak level. So this is going to have 210, AI petaflops, and it's going to be an incredibly fast supercomputer. And this is basically being based on NVIDIA's DGX SuperPod reference architecture. So it's one of the latest developments that's coming out of the CDAC foray, and I think this is something which is very reflective of their 30-year journey. I don't know a lot of people know this, but CDAC was started in 1988. Same year as NASSCOM, so they've had a similar journey in terms of length as far as their longevity is concerned.
I think
and they've been
the
completely-
Param I think the Param supercomputers has been always famous, right?
Exactly.
One of the
They
proudest
started
things we had as as in terms of computing system.
Absolutely, yeah. So they started their foray into supercomputing in 1988 with the first version of Param, and that was back in, like I said, 32 years ago, and so on and so forth. We've basically had like such phenomenal jumps in terms of the speed of these supercomputers, and that's not the only one. There's another one called Param Shavak, which is essentially a supercomputer in a box, and there are different versions of this which are essentially being used for bioinformatics, for agriculture, and these supercomputers are located in strategic locations across India. One of them is in Maharashtra, and it was launched as early as January of this year. They're also on a very big mission for the National Supercomputing Mission and to develop the HPC infrastructure for the same. And there are some 3 different kinds of hardware that is being developed especially for this. More importantly, I think, is the fact that not only is CDAC ensuring that India has supercomputers, they're also trying to build the hardware that is necessary to power these equipments. And this is already happening. The Rudra server is one such, which is being developed with the Intel processor. And this is, in addition to that, another indigenous products include the Trinetra, as well as the software stack development for the same. So it's slightly technical, I know, but if you really think about it, it's not. And it's, it's something that if you just look over the hardware technicalities and really look at it in terms of what they're trying to bring to the table, which I think is amazing by every standard possible. And finally, the other thing that's very interesting that CDAC is doing is focusing on their Indian language capability, which is also something they've been working on since the time they started, since the late 80s. So now with the advent of AI, with the advancements in NLP, this is something they're going very aggressively with, and one of their most ambitious projects is the Bahubakshak speech-to-speech translation systems and IEIR systems that they're developing. And this will be extensively used for areas like agri, healthcare, edutech, legal, as well as banking. So yeah, great work happening on the CDAC front. I think, lots to look forward to. And I agree with Professor Manan Suri Jibu. I think he is right. We're not talking enough about hardware. And hopefully after RAISE 2020, the conversations will change.
Yeah, that's really good. I even there were other speakers also on the MIT showcase. The head of NIC. So many amazing speakers speaking about the importance of data and things like that. Since today, Soumitra don't have to rush. Let's go to Nivedita. How was your race 2020 day 4?
It was good.
No, day 3 actually.
Day 3.
Yeah.
So yeah, yesterday was a little interesting in the sense they actually talked about the research that is being carried on in the field of responsible AI, and where exactly are they using those research to create a social impact. So maybe the most important point was made by Professor Tambe, Milind Tambe, who was the keynote speaker as well. So he pointed out where Google Research India was actually using AI and ML to help the marginalized communities. He cited some examples like they were using M Mitra and Khushi Baby as a part of Armad NGO. So how they were actually identifying beneficiaries who were mostly pregnant or lactating women who were kind of would be dropping out of the hello.
Yes, we
Yes.
can hear you.
Nivedita.
Go on. We can hear you. She's on mute.
Yeah, and she
She's
disappeared.
offline. Damn it.
Someone had
Oh.
to say it.
Got it. Okay, so yeah, Samiksha, tell me. Let's while Nivedita comes back, I think somebody has to let her in. But when she comes back,
I'll
we can-
keep an eye out. If she comes
Sure,
back.
sure. So Samiksha, so how was your day 3?
Right. No, it was really nice. I was covering a session called "Shaping Young Minds with AI," and I think all the speakers directly addressed the youth and the concerns of the youth. Some of them, like Mr. Sikka, gave very inspirational speeches about encouraging the youth to try their hands at AI. We had Dr. Roger Shank, who completely bashed the formal education systems, and he advocated for letting students do what they want to do versus putting them through the torture of formal education. That's exactly what he called it.
Uh, I think even our formal education is a product of industrial revolution, right? It was created to create factory workers. There are some books which says,
Exactly what he
the
said. Yeah.
9-5 schedule,
He
things
says
like that.
he says we're just following what the Romans had thought of those many years back, and why aren't we rethinking what we do? Um, yeah, we had Mala Sharma from Adobe who really introduced certain products such as Adobe Sensei, which are like AI products, and how the companies think that they're really putting the power in the hands of the students. Yeah, so some interesting stuff there.
Yeah, Nivedita, you are on mute. Yes, I got to say
Yes, I'm back.
that. Yeah. Okay, so
So,
yeah, carry on.
yeah, yeah, sorry, somehow I dropped off in between. So I was talking
Yeah.
about M. Mitra and Professor Tambe, how they were using AI and ML in helping the marginalized sections. So most interesting was, how they used M. Mitra to identify beneficiaries who were mostly pregnant and lactating women and children. Uh, to identify these are the women they are going to drop off in between. So Mitra is all about calling up. There's a software kind of a thing who would call up the beneficiary and inform them that okay, so this is your first trimester. These are the things that you need to do. This is your second trimester. These are the things that you need to do. So maybe this is your follow-up consultation with the doctor. These are the medicines that you need to take. So this is Mitra is all about. They make calls every 1 or 2 weeks, once a week or twice a week, and they inform the beneficiaries what the week looks like for them in terms of consultation and checkups. So, but the thing is that most importantly, the beneficiaries are not always interested in listening to them. So it's either they forget, or maybe they just don't care, or so they wanted to identify who are that they really forget, or is it that they are simply not interested. So identifying those people were very important because they have to call up, and even calling up huge numbers is a task in itself. So they used AI and ML to do that, and actually they had a very good accuracy rate to identifying who are the beneficiaries who will drop out, and they kind of help them bringing back to the program. So this was one interesting thing that I learned. The other one was something called Wildlife Conservative Trust, where he identified that wildlife and human have always been in conflict with one another. So they cannot live in harmony. So they have to come in conflict, and so they kind of try to identify where the areas there will be conflict. Conflict, as in you can say that poachers kind to kill animals for this. So they try to identify those areas, and again it has been a hit because it has a high rate of accuracy. Mostly in the state of Maharashtra, they have been able to do this. And the other one was Khushi Baby. The name itself is like, it makes you very happy, Khushi Baby. So it's all about the quality of data that is being collected for that particular Khushi Baby program. So they doubted the quality of the program because it depends on many factors. Say, for example, the person who is collecting the data, he might not be in a mood to collect the data, right data at that point of time, or he may be biased to a particular community. So there may be underrepresentation for that matter. So they again used AI to identify if the data collected has a fair amount of representation, and it at all can be used for modeling and stuff. So Professor Tambe's session was really interesting, and we got to know a lot of work that they're actually doing on ground rather than what research is all about and what we are planning to do and what we are doing. So it's all about applicability. And then the best part was the moderator, Professor Balaji, who actually had set the tone of the entire discussion by laying down 6 separate questions. Mostly in the moderators are not necessarily, they lay down questions. They did lay down questions, and the panelists were actually trying to answer those questions, which made the session even more interesting. The highlight was Professor Nambe, and of course, there were a couple of points made by Professor Maninder Singh. from IBM Research. He had also said that AI has already been in use since 1960s, but all of a sudden we have it has already been about accuracy rather than fairness and accountability. So all of a sudden, why is it that there has been a change, a shift from accuracy to fairness and transparency, accountability, and all these new terms have been added, if I can call so. So, but then he also added that IBM has been very pro in kind of giving an open source to a platform to everybody, saying that okay, you go ahead, use this platform, see if at all you are benefiting from these things, and come back with your feedback. So this is another thing. And last but not least, I think one was Dr. Vatsa, who kind of said that if you are trying to two important aspects you have to keep in mind when designing an AI algorithm is context and intent. So if your context and intent is right, definitely the results will be right in itself.
I think that's pretty much in line with what Victoria Baines also said few day, like the other day, right? In algorithms need to be designed with correct intention and context in mind. Coming to the session I was in a wonderful session called Unlocking Data for Innovation. So it was very packed session. You got our beloved and respected NASCOM Senior Vice President Sangeeta Gupta was moderating the session. Even though there were some technical glitches, he thinks where there was some. I mean, when you run so many sessions, at this capacity, right? It's bound to happen. So there were some technical issues, but the interesting part was the audience were waiting for it to come back. Everyone eagerly waiting, and things were resolved. And in the end, we get to hear the speaker. So the keynote was by Rama Akiraju, who is an IBM fellow, one of the leading researchers in the area of AI and data. And we had Srikanth Velamakani, Shang Huang. I'm sorry if I'm saying his name correct. Is a senior researcher from Microsoft. Then you have Balaraman Ravindran, IIT Madras, Bosch Center of AI Research. And I'm missing some names here. Simi Chowdhury was there, of course, from METI. It was a very good panel discussions because the one of the key things is if you have a different idea, then that's a very interesting conversation. So what happened was Srikanth is of the idea of having more data available in open market, while Balraman Ravindran is more of an person who says that we should ensure so many checks are put in place and things are prevented if we have to make that kind of data available in open market, right? So it was really good, and I really like how Srikanth Velamakani started his presentation by mentioning about Jon Snow, not the Game of Thrones guy, the real Jon Snow, who back in the, I think it was the influenza epidemic or the Black Pearl in London, where it was the key of the disease was spread through water, right? And people were looking for the source, and he, for the first time, let's say the modern back, data analytics, he used the data. He charted out the whole map of the areas. He plotted out where the disease people who with disease were, and then he figured out the whole thing is happening from one particular pipe, public pipe. So that's like the beginning of how they're using data for public health, right? So I think Fractal is one of the companies which use a lot of data, in decision making in many industries. And so that was the main thing. Rama Akiraju also mentioned some of the similar points, right? The responsible AI principles, why the AI should be responsible, explainable, why it should be accountable, all the important things. While Huang was mostly focused on language translation, I think a major theme we are seeing in the Race 2020 is the importance of translation to Indian language as well as between Indian languages.
True.
Yes.
And that's something Huang was also speaking about. So he pointed out that how in Microsoft has this service which is adopted by the EU Parliament, which translates 12 languages, and he's saying India has a potential to do the same, right? But again, on the other side, throughout the days we were talking about the lack of data sets in Indian languages. And I think that's something that will be addressed after, I'm sure, after the race 2020, because that's the one major thing that keeps coming up over and over again and again.
Yeah.
So let me check if I'm. Well, I keep writing notes because it's not even readable because it's so fast. I'm writing it down.
My book is almost over. I've been scribbling like so much in the last 3 days. It's all I have like some 10 pages
Uh,
left.
There's quickly two interesting points that I want to share as
Yes.
well, which I've missed earlier. We had David Kenny from Nielsen,
Mhm.
who put forth this very interesting idea of leveraging media and AI for education, and he says we are employing deep learning models to learn what people are watching and to recommend new videos or material to them. And he said it would be so powerful if we could use the same for educational content to drive engagement for students. That I thought was interesting. Also, we had Anthony Salcito from Microsoft, who spoke about who addressed the fears of job loss due to AI. But he actually put things in the correct perspective, saying that digital learning has actually taken learning into the hands of the individuals away from institutions. And that's how he said it should be, not centered around institutions, but individuals, which syncs with what Roger Schank had said as well. So I think it's really about democratizing the revolution, what you want to do with your life, the education, the path that you want to choose. These are ideas that have repeatedly come up in various speeches.
Now, coming to Saumitro, I think you were in some of the fascinating sessions on Race
Yeah.
2020. How was it?
Yeah.
How was your the day 3?
Yeah, so I think fascinating is the exact word I would like to use to describe the two sessions I had, and I will give you my reasons for that as well. So the two sessions, the first one in the morning for which I had to rush abruptly yesterday was about harnessing the power of AI and how we can go towards growth. That was a more generic session. And the other session that was later in the afternoon around 2:30ish was about agriculture and supply chain, using AI. So some of the striking things and why I say it's fascinating is that 49% of employment is dependent on the agricultural sector. So the agricultural sector accounts for 49% of employment, but it only accounts for 16% of the GDP. So there is a clear mismatch between the amount they are, they're contributing their value in terms of value they're contributing to the GDP and the kind of employment they are generating. So obviously people are not being paid enough. 49 and 16, there's a huge gap. And interestingly is that not everybody, especially the small farmers, are not only dependent on agriculture. Clearly, agricultural income is not sufficient to balance their needs. There are 100 million families in India which are dependent on agriculture. So that means 100 into 4 on an average, 4 people in a family. So that's about 400 million Indians are dependent on agriculture. So this is not something which can take lightly. And we are still largely at the mercy of weather gods and the fickle-mindedness of what's happening because of climatic conditions being deteriorating. So they don't know how much water to use. They don't even know sometimes which crop selection they should do, to harvest. So AI obviously plays a massive role in all of this, your crop harvesting, your water usage, pesticides. You'll be surprised that the loss is almost 30 to 40%. And cotton is one of the, like 40 million farmers are in cotton. So cotton, 50 to 55% of pesticides which are used in India is just on cotton. And yet there is a huge waste. So there is, people, either they are not using sufficient pesticides or they are using too much of pesticides. Both are bad. AI clearly, through data driven stuff has a big role. So agriculture, of course, there are many. The other interesting thing which I heard yesterday, somebody made a comment. I think it will stay with me for a long time. It says that it's not your data or my data, it's our data. I'll give you an example. Like when you think of, it was said in the session yesterday that when you think of healthcare, the first thing that comes to your mind is clinical diagnostics and how the patient can be treated. But sometime in May, there was a severe shortage of paracetamol tablets. You couldn't get at the chemist, in most of the chemists in all parts of the country. So that's a supply chain issue. How do you, and it's not about healthcare working in isolation and the retail sector working in their silos. There has to be a way that the data and the information can be combined so that we can we can avert or avoid these sort of things from happening. That's a very good point. Then banking, in banking, things like CIBIL, typically CIBIL score. I mean, for those of you who have applied for loans and all of that would know how important your CIBIL scores are. So that's what determines your credit worthiness and whether you'll get better loans or higher loans in future. But CIBIL score is not really adequate or not relevant for people who are marginalized or very poor. They don't even have that kind of data available with them to even apply for a CIBIL score rating. So how do you use behavioral science, collecting data from various activities which they do, and find out that their credit worthiness, or call it behavioral stance, whether they have even the willingness to pay back small loans. So these are some very interesting thing. And also, how would you, the whole bespoke model, so the kind of products you would target for a 60-year-old man who's just on the verge of retirement or who's already retired would be very different from that you target a 24-year-old who's just got into the workforce and has many decades ahead of him or her. So how do you have these things in mind? The automotive sector is very interesting. So automotive sector is one sector which continues to believe in mass production. But at the same time, there has to be a personalization in your vehicle, through the connectivity and all of that. So on one hand, you have mass production, and on the other hand, you have connectivity. And at the same time, uh, these models, the life cycle of these models are pretty long. So, to build a car, new designed car, it takes at least 3 to 4 years, not like a software product that can be built in 6 months or 9 months. So whatever you use or whatever techniques you use, one has to keep in mind that the implication is going to be very long, 3 to 4 years. You're stuck with it for 3 to 4 years. So that's why that the choice needs to be made adequately. Then, but one of the most important things is I think two speakers resonated was that AI is not a magic bullet. If you think it's going to create magic for you overnight and it's going to change everything for overnight, then that's a fallacy in your thinking. You need to prepare yourself for the long haul. AI is going to be a long haul, and you need to have mindset that AI can actually change. A lot of people may not actually believe in it because the results may not be forthcoming immediately. So you need to celebrate these small wins. That's a very important thing. And in fashion industry, there was interesting thing about a design. Sometimes fashion typically has, at least in the Western countries, typically has a window of some 4 to 6 weeks. Things get out of fashion. So sometimes what happens is that these designers choose a fashion and they produce garments and all of that, but the timing is wrong. But at a later point in time, that same fashion comes back and it does brilliant. So how do you use data, historical data, plus your other data to come out with that, getting just that timing right? Design is a very important thing. So briefly, these were some of the things which stayed on with me. Yeah.
I think one of the important panel, I kept this for last, was Sinduja's session. Sinduja attended on healthcare, right? The last mile access. We had a representative from NHS UK speaking, as well as so many other prominent speakers from, I think, from the health ministry, other agencies were speaking. So what was your takeaway from those people?
So Okay, this is a panel that I think I was a little partial towards. I think since I've worked extensively on NASSCOM's actual healthcare initiative, the Life Sciences and Healthcare Innovation Forum, I've been very fortunate to actually hear some of these speakers in the past and really been very closely involved with seeing ground up the kind of work that's happening. And even then, no matter how many times I hear it, every time I hear it again, it just amazes me in terms of the extent and the level to which the planning is being done. Not to mention the landscape that we have that's available ahead of us, to actually affect this kind of change. So I mean, the session really started with and what's nice is that even though like I said, I've been covering these sessions for more than a year right now. Every time the speakers are different, and very few speakers actually get repeated, which I think is testimony to the fact that there are so many people out there that are actually very heavily invested in sustainable healthcare, primary healthcare, and using technology to really make a difference. So one of the opening session, the opening inaugural note was by Sunil Wadhwani, who's of the Wadhwani Foundation, of course, and he also runs WISH, which is the Wadhwani Institute for Sustainable Healthcare. I mean, of course, in a previous time in his life, he was known for founding iGate, one of the biggest technology companies in the 90s and the early 2000s. And he has slowly gravitated towards sustainable health. And I think the story behind it was what really made a lot of sense, because he started out his session by talking about his experience meeting a very poor couple in Rajasthan, and how the lady, who showed typical symptoms of diabetes could not get herself tested because of her poverty and because of their lack of access, and she's been struggling with that condition since. And at least when he spoke to them last, which is more than a decade ago, and he says today, 10 years on, it's a very different situation. We have wearables that can easily detect the presence of your blood sugar levels. There are so many different kinds of technology tools that are available that can easily tell you within a matter of minutes what your different health parameters, vital parameters are. We even have devices these days that can be put and slid under a mattress, and it can monitor your patterns and your bodily functions while you sleep. So that's the level up to which I think we've made advancements today. I think that's a difference from 10 years ago to now. And what's interesting about organizations like WISH is to be able to drive these solutions to the people that really need it the most. And I think that was something that was resonating across the panel. Similar thoughts were being echoed by Dr. Sangeeta Reddy as well, the Joint Managing Director of Apollo Hospitals and President of FICCI, where she also spoke about how a little bit of history here, where Apollo actually did its first teleconsult more than 20 years ago, when then President of the United States of America, Bill Clinton, was visiting. And he was really surprised at the extent at which and the potential that India had at the time. And she made a case for an IT, a federated architecture, and to use data to really sort of integrate healthcare. But she was told that they have bigger problems. India has bigger healthcare problems like eradicating cholera and TB and other such illnesses. So she says, 20 years later, I feel like I've finally waited my chance, and here I am. And here we are today at the cusp of healthcare, where we can really use technology to make a difference. So this was, like I said, the overall tone of, the speeches that were made in yesterday's panel. And each one of these people who have made and stayed on in the healthcare sector for so long, for so many years, and invested so much time, are now trying to use that collective experience, the power of the data that they have, the availability of AI and the ecosystem that surrounds it, to really actually drive it in the primary healthcare pockets. So that was my major takeaway from the panel yesterday. And I think each time I speak to people in that healthcare space, their will to really drive and make a difference in making healthcare more accessible and affordable only gets stronger. So I think it's a great path we're on, and it's great that we have the government really pushing for it. We had Dr. Indu Bhushan from the National Health Authority, who also spoke about building a digital highway, but with guardrails, so that innovation can really grow. So it was a good panel, and I think, like I said, the collective resolve of the industry is something that is the only way that this is going to move forward. It can't work in silos.
I think what Soumitro, Sundaja, Nivedita, and Samiksha spoke, everything resonates with something that Sangeeta Gupta said yesterday, right? So the NASSCOM report, right, published few weeks back, which points out that you can unlock 500 billion to India's economy by 2030, through AI and data. But how do you do that, right? So that's the one thing, Sangeeta was saying, right? So this unlocked value, right? This value comes from building effective data utilization strategy across all the verticals, right? So then only it will work, right? The tendency of us to focus on one or two narrow areas alone is not going to work. even though creating narrow AI programs is necessary, something Rama Akiraju was saying, right? You start off with the broader base AI model, then you move narrow and narrow and narrow. But when you speak about the country as a whole, as an economy as a whole, you need to get this all these industries to transform in a way, right? Healthcare, education, agriculture, retail, e-commerce. We even spoke about fashion. So it is interesting, and I think we had so many enlightening key takeaways from here. And as also again bringing back one of the major topics of this event, the Indian language translation system. Ravindran was speaking about the work IDIC Language Processing Institute in IIT Madras is now started doing, right? So I think one big priority I see coming out of this event is, let's say, fast tracking of creating resources and data sets for Indian languages. I mean, we have 22 official languages and so many other unofficial, but widely spoken languages. So I feel it's been taking us into a very focused in a path that's driven through a focused path rather than talking about 100 things, which happens in many cases, right? You will have, but there are certain elements which keeps repeating again and again, which means these are things that should be prioritized for the country. Data availability, language translation, things like governance part, which healthcare and agriculture and things like comes together. So, and of course, responsible AI as a sense of, the ethical and moral part of AI, the making a good AI, even it comes in line with AI for social good also, right? What Milind Ambe was speaking. In fact, it reminded me of Google's recent project of a flood detection system, which they started in Bihar. Now they're expanding across the country. So
Yeah.
It's a really very enlightening 3 days. Now let's hope the same things will happen today also. So what are your plans for today? Which are the sessions you guys will be covering? I'll start with Sindhuja.
So today I think I have a fairly open first half in the morning, so I'm going to spend some time trying to see what sessions I can just attend, because I have a fireside chat in the evening, which has Rekha Menon, the MD of Accenture, India MD of Accenture, and followed by data-driven research and decision making, which I think is going to be an interesting session for me because I've never actually attended something like this before. So I'm quite excited about that. A lot of learnings, no doubt.
Actually, right now, Telangana AI Showcase is actually happening, and we are all waiting to. I'm already waiting to after the court to jump onto that.
Yeah.
I think that's another interesting session on role of data on responsible AI. I think this will be finally bringing together some of the things that were discussed. There will be panels on data, then there were panels on responsible AI, but I think this will kind of merge everything and bring it under one umbrella. The issues with, especially with data privacy and availability and things like that. Nivedita, what is your focus on for the day?
So I will be attending AI for All, which is
Okay.
starting at 12:30. So not sure what exactly will it cover, but definitely I look forward to learning a lot from this session as well.
Okay, so Soumitra, I think I am excited about your session. I think you will be covering
Yeah, the
infrastructure for AI-led
infrastructure. Yeah,
innovation.
actually in the evening, 7 p.m. So I
Hmm.
just wanted to sort of make a request to you that tomorrow I don't have any allocation. So in case you think of something, somebody is overloaded, or you can fit me somewhere. So
Yeah,
do think
definitely
of
will
it.
do
Yeah.
that.
So today
So,
is my last session.
but Soumitra has been working double yesterday, so it's just fair that you get you get to have the proper rest for
No,
your
no, 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 no. I'm
systems.
fine. I mean, in case you need a hand, an extra hand, I'm absolutely fine.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. So then we have, I think Samiksha is on ethics, but no, not ethics, but
No, I'm doing
Samiksha.
which is at 5
Okay,
p.m.
Oh, that'll be a nice panel.
Yeah,
That's an
we
interesting
have
one. There will
that's very
be a World
interesting.
Economic Forum for folks there, Kay
Do we
Butterfield,
have
Perth, and
do we
all
have
those
World
people.
Economic Forum? No, we have representation from the World Bank Group. We have
Okay. Michael, why am I forgetting his last name? Michael,
Rutkowski.
yes,
Yeah.
Rakowski. Yes. I'm very
Yeah.
bad with the last name, so
I'm very excited about Mr. Sridhar Vembu, the guy that